Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Welcome back to a new episode and second to last of the season for Free Hit Double Game Week 37. We're, close to the Endgame, hence the name Endgame for today's episode. And brace yourselves for a Pras original rant and frustration let out today because his luck has been awful the past. Great decisions, but just no luck here and there. So I've been speaking to Pras about it, and I've never seen this guy like this before. So let it out, Pras. Tell us what's going on.
No rant. Firstly, good to be here. Second to last one. So we'll be positive. Look, I mean, what we were discussing just before we started streaming is just essentially if I had sat back and said, what are the things that can go wrong this game week and made a list of 5 things, it would have been a City defender doing well because I had one. So that's Laporte scoring. It's basically Matip doing better than Robertson, which he scored. It's basically Son going mad against Liverpool. He scored and he has another game left. And then obviously Richarlison and Nketiah, who I didn't have. So I went bold and went Jesus, who it doesn't look like is starting today and may lose his spot to Sterling. So it's just kind of not working out. But the good thing is we have a free hit left, and we have, like we always do in Burning Questions, we look forward. And, if we smash our free hit in 37, then we have nothing to complain about.
Awesome. So today's topic agenda will be pretty straightforward. We're going to look through the fixtures for 37, players to target for the double game week. And then talk about maybe the template and how many singlers we need, which singlers to pick out. And then we'll just go through our free hit teams, which are very similar. And both of us are on free hit as well. So should be a fairly smooth episode today. So
but we'll also kind of, we won't forget you guys not on a free hit, because I think a lot of you have played it in 33 or in 36 and have got gains. So, in fact, the first thing that you'll come to, Andy, so I'll let you do the agenda, would be, in fact, talking about the macro picture.
And by the way, so for the listeners, this is being recorded on Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. UK time. So the game week is not over yet. There's still, I think, 5 fixtures left for the game week. So keep that in mind. Plus, the next deadline is on Sunday, not Saturday. So an extra day to contemplate and think about your transfers moving forward. Okay, awesome. So you want me to run through the macro points, Pras, or you want to?
Up to you. Are you on the first slide?
I'm on the first slide, yep.
Okay, all right. Let's go on. You go for it.
Okay, so slide 1 is just the fixture ticker for the last 2 game weeks. Obviously, 38 is... 38 is actually the last game week, and then 37 is this week with the doubles for the smaller teams. A lot of us are interested in Aston Villa, Everton, Crystal Palace. Not so much on Leicester anymore. I'm not even sure where I would go there. And then there's the Burnley, but we don't want to go there either. So it's a very interesting free hit week. It's a very interesting double game week because now that we have these doublers from the not so strong teams, you can sort of combine it and have probably 2 or 3 bigger hitters from the single teams in order to formulate a pretty solid free hit team, which is why you see a lot of the Gordons in our free hits and so on and so forth. So some macro points to note that Pras mentioned to me is FA Cup final is on Saturday, so the deadline will be on Sunday. Villa, Everton, Palace, best doubles, not so great, game week 38. Out of that, Everton have 2 home fixtures, which is very intriguing. And I think a lot of people are interested on Richarlison captaincy this week. And then there's Spurs, Liverpool, City, which are all good holds for 37 and 38. With that being said, question marks with Liverpool now with the surprising rotation of Salah plus Robertson. That really sucked. And then you have Chelsea also hold, but to be decided after the FA Cup final. 43% of free hit 2 is still left.
Let's just spend a little bit time on the first few points first, sure. Andy, if it's okay. Yeah. So the first point on the FA Cup final being on Saturday. So what are the implications? The implications are Injury. So we'll get to see any players from Liverpool if they've gone on to play 120 minutes potentially. So those could be interesting punts going outside that. So let's say Diaz plays his third game in a row, plays 120 minutes, then maybe a Jota could be an interesting option in the midweek. For Chelsea players, it's actually less interesting. I mean, you could, if you're not on a free hit, that game would determine whether you want to keep hold of Alonso or a James or a Havertz. So I think those dynamics will work. So definitely kind of wait for your final decisions until the FA Cup final has happened. Sunday deadline is actually perfect. You get all the team news, you get the press updates. So that would be helpful. The second point that you made on the Villa Everton Palace. So this is now relevant for people contemplating free hit or not free hit. So because Villa, Everton and Palace have the best double now, they all don't have a great game week 38. Now, you could argue that Palace play Man United at home and that has suddenly become a good fixture. I wouldn't be able to disagree. But Villa and Everton, clearly, Everton away to Arsenal, Villa play Man City. I think those are tougher fixtures. So if, for example, you're looking at your team and you're short of Villa and Palace in particular, and you're full of Arsenal players, that's one macro point to think about if you're thinking about free hit 37 and 38. And we will come to pros and cons of 37, 38 in a second. In terms of Spurs, Liverpool and City, look, I think our teams are full of these players to an extent. Some have triple City, some have double, some have one. But Liverpool, for sure, there are quite a few. Spurs, for sure, a lot of people are Son, Kane, Kulusevski. So I think these players are definite holds. A lot of free hit teams will have them anyway. So that should not change your thinking in terms of free hit 37 or 38. And you mentioned the Chelsea point. So that was the last thing. In terms of the free hits left, so all the chips have been played. Pretty much all the bench boosts have been played. There'll be a few that will come in 37 that didn't have the right setup in 36. But wildcards have been played. Free hit 1 has been played. Triple captain has been pretty much played out. What is left is now against you is the 43% free hits that will be played either this week or next week. I still think the bulk of it, the majority will be free hit 37. So I guess the first thing before we go to the more zoomed in view of game week 37 is, Andy, where are you with free hit 37 versus free hit 38?
Yeah, very interesting question. Well, first of all, 43% of free hit twos left in the top 10K. And as you mentioned, a bulk of them will be used in the 37 game week. Going into game week 36, granted, it's not as explosive as we thought. There was 40% of bench boost left in the top 10K, right? And I think a majority of players used it. And that was kind of scary going into it without a bench boost. Like I was expecting a small red arrow or, stacked against the wall. But this game week, moving into it with a free hit in my hands, I'm actually, not as confident as if I had a BB in 36, for example, because this free hit in 37 could backfire because of the singlers with decent fixtures into 37. So very interesting, just meta thinking here.
So one point on that before you go on, I actually slightly disagree with that because let's look at the free hits that have been played in the past. The game week 33 free hit where we talked in the past that's a high risk, high reward free hit. Why was that? It was because you were replacing a Salah with a Bruno, you're replacing a Kane with a Ronaldo, and some of it worked out, some of it didn't work out. So the issue was that the Man United players were very expensive. You had to actually make sacrifices in your big hitters to get them on a free hit. Game week 36 was a different kind of risk in the sense that everybody was doubling. So you were not really going for players. You were losing players on your free hit and getting other doublers instead of just basically taking out singlers for doublers. I think the 37 one works slightly better and I think is a slightly lower risk free hit simply because, as you mentioned, the doubling teams are cheap. So you could basically still own your Kane, Son, Salah, and still have the doubling players. So ultimately, the people you're replacing, these doublers like Zaha, Richarlison, Ings or Watkins, the Villa defenders, is with other players like Kulusevski, with Weghorst or Saka, exactly. So or Cancelo. So yes, there is risk, and in game week 34. This was the extreme example that even with limited risk, it can backfire. So in game week 34, when we had the Chelsea and Man United double, some people played their free hit. The two players they went against were Robertson and Saka. They both had 15 pointers. So you can have extreme examples of it not working out. But I think if you're not taking on, or you may choose to take on Salah if you wanted, you could go De Bruyne. We will come to drafts where we will talk about risk appetite and how you can actually gain by going different, or how you can play defensive. But if you wanted to, you could play a straight bat free hit where all you're doing is basically changing the periphery of your team, basically the last 5 or 6 players, which are the weaker 5 or 6 players, and replacing them with doublers. So I actually think lower upside, but then lower downside as well, to quite a large extent. Like, I'd be surprised if free hitters end up with red arrows. Now, famous words, and you can again save this, and when I get my red arrow in 37, you can play it. But I think it'll be hard to get one unless you're really, really unlucky.
Yeah, you're just getting that many more fixtures to play. Granted, I guess the simple general thinking I was thinking of was you're replacing solid players from stronger teams with doublers from weaker teams. Granted, these doublers have decent fixtures as well, so totally fair. And on the note that you asked me, when am I free hitting? I'm free hitting in 37 for a simple reason: is my team right now only has one doubler in Richarlison, so I'd rather maximize those fixtures and get to those 7. Probably, I think a very template team right now for free hit is around 6, 7, 8 doublers. Usually, I think I see 7 a lot, so. Obviously, that maximizes my chances in terms of getting more points because of the minutes that will probably double in those 6 or 7 extra fixtures, which is why I'm leaning to 37. Plus, my 38 team right now, just on paper, looks perfectly fine moving into with the fixtures that go alongside, as you mentioned, Spurs, Liverpool, and City. Yeah. By the way, FPL Spartan says, Pras, do you know the free hit 2 percentage between 10K to 50K? On live FPL, correct me if I'm wrong, they only do top 10K and top 100K, correct?
Or they do top 10K and overall. But
okay.
I think Spartans makes a good point that, and this was true of Bench Boost as well. Sometimes when we look at only top 10K figures, it's actually slightly underestimating it, because there may be more people with a free hit left between 10 to 50K. And that is the reason that they're in 10 to 50K, because they haven't played their second free hit yet. So there is I would say this number would be slightly higher in the people above top 10K.
Awesome. How about yourself? So you're free hit 37, obviously. How come you came to that decision?
Yeah. So let me take the viewers and the listeners through some pros and cons that I kind of just jotted down for 37 and 38. So I mentioned for free hit 37, the pros are you get these cheap double game weekers, so you don't sacrifice your team too much. So that basically leads to lower upside, but lower risk. You can basically get out of Arsenal assets. So if somebody like me, I have 3 Arsenal players, I don't like their away fixture to Newcastle. Now, Spurs went there and I backed against Spurs when they went to Newcastle. I benched Doherty. It didn't work out, but I think on paper, Newcastle is looking good. It's a defense that you can say that Saka may get a return, but he probably won't haul. So if you're looking at a Saka to a Zaha, I think it makes sense. So those are the pros. And then lastly, actually in the pro, Villa and Everton, as I mentioned, to an extent, they are only needed this week. So if you're thinking about them, you don't have enough of them, get them this week. You don't need them next week because they play Man City and Arsenal. On the cons for free hit 37, your team will look fine. Everyone's team looks fine. So it's not a case of, why should I free hit? Because this will also be the case in game week 38. The team looks fine because a lot of we're all loaded up on good teams who all doubled in game week 36. So it is a natural outlet of that 37 and 38 will also look good because City, Liverpool are good teams. So that's basically the idea. And you want the other con for free hit 37 is you can potentially argue that players like Zaha you want for 37 and 38 because he doubles now and then plays Man United at home, which is always a good fixture for Palace. Zaha will have extra motivation. Spurs plays another example where free hit may not be relevant. Maybe you're looking for Son and Kane kind of combo. You'd rather have them now and just keep them for 37 and 38. So that's basically what I think about in 37. Forget about when you should have played it. Forget about there is not enough upside. Now you have to think only between 37 and 38. So now let's come to 38. 38, I think the big pro is all the games happen together. You may get some team news of, 3 or 4 teams. It could be Leicester, it could be Liverpool, anyone. You could get some information, some crumbs of info before the deadline that will kind of give you an edge. Let's say news comes out that De Bruyne is not starting, and a lot of the people have De Bruyne. You can quickly just switch him to a Son and Kane combo. So that early team news element gives you an advantage. The other advantage of Free Hit 38 is you will get a full picture of the relegation. Look, time value is always valuable, right? So knowing if Everton are relegated, then maybe you don't want a Richarlison. Maybe they'll play kids. Knowing the top 4 race, maybe if you know that Spurs are out of the top 4 race, you don't want a Son and Kane. But my problem with that is you just don't know how people react to that. So if Spurs are out, and there's nothing against Spurs, they're playing really well, and I hope they do well. But let's just assume we're all planning for this whole Norwich away game for Spurs. Let's say they're out of the top 4 race. What does that mean? Will they be completely flat? Or will they completely be out and want to, smash Norwich to pieces because they're angry? You can play any narrative. So that's why, while it is a pro that you'll have a clearer picture of the league, you don't know how teams react. I mean, for example, we don't know how Leicester is reacting after being out of Europe. So far, the signs are they're playing pretty poorly. They rested a few players in the game after Europe. So that picture, that narrative is not very clear. The other pro is dead ending. That's my favorite word. You can basically dead end your team this week. This is your last transfer that you'll make for the season because you're free hitting in 38. So essentially, you can decide to sell Salah if you don't fancy him this week. You can sell Trent. You can sell any single player because you can choose to get them back next week. So that gives you a little bit of an edge in terms of dead ending and then free hitting in game week 38. My main con for free hit 38 is that all teams have good fixtures. There's no doubles. Everybody has a single fixture. You're basically chancing it. If you're going De Bruyne versus Salah, you're playing, one of them is what is City's fixture? City is playing, Man City is home to Aston Villa, and you're backing a Salah who's home to Wolves. So it's very difficult to back any players in this team because not only are you picking those players, you're backing against a lot of the good players. We've talked about the good fixtures for pretty much all teams. I mean, even Chelsea. Let's say you're sitting on triple Chelsea and you're really not feeling it. They're all home to Watford in game week 38. They could be rotation, they could not be. So game week 38 feels a little bit like a gamble, but if you're in a state where you want to take that gamble, and you could be, maybe you're around 32K and you really want to go for it, fine. That's all okay. I think no decision, anything we talk about today, we've reached the stage where it all depends on your risk appetite, your mini league state, where you want to end up for the season. Some of us, for example, we're hanging around 9K now. My free hit is going to be the boring template free hit because I'm not going to back against it. I'm happy with a smallish green arrow and ending the season at 8K. That's basically my goal. But other people's goals could be different. So that's basically what we need to think about.
Yep. Perfectly understood and perfectly said. Plus, it seems like in 38, there's always some high-flying scores and some random scores here and there. So very unpredictable last game week of the season. Should we move to slide 2?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So slide 2 is basically done by a community guy, Wrangler Golem. So his handle is FPL_Wrangler, WRANGLER. He did this chart which caught my eye. I think TED Talks FPL also does something similar, but I like this because he's done it on a fixture by fixture basis. So for the listeners, what you have on the y-axis is you have XG conceded for the opponent. And on the x-axis, you have XG for the team that is playing at home. So what you have is basically like a matchup. And this chart very nicely summarizes why some of the single game week teams stand out here. What this means is the more you are on the quadrant. So if you're on the top right quadrant, you have a good offense and your opponent has a bad defense because your XG conceded is high and your own XG is very good. So the teams that fall in this bucket are Chelsea versus Leicester and Tottenham versus Burnley. So Chelsea versus Leicester is a tricky one to talk about because less bullish on their attacking assets anyway, but it also explains why some people may have kept Havertz over Kulusevski, for example. So Chelsea-Leicester, again, an example of a team which has shown good offensive data, but bad defensive data on the other side, which is Leicester. Tottenham-Burnley is in there. This explains the reason why a lot of people will go Son and Kane on their free hit. And it makes sense. Don't let people talk you out of, come on, it's a double game week. You only, live once. It makes sense to back that fixture. Liverpool, Southampton, it's just on the edge of good offense and bad defense. Back that fixture. I think a lot of people are burnt by the Salah benching yesterday. I personally am looking at triple Liverpool still on my free hit, just because that is a fixture to back. And obviously, worryingly, also Man City versus West Ham. It is slightly on the bottom right corner, which is basically a good offense, which we know Man City is, but it's also a good defense because West Ham are at home and their home numbers are pretty good. So that's basically on the single game weekers. Unfortunately, we have nobody on the right side of the quadrant that has a double game week. So what we're essentially saying is nobody on the right side of this, nobody who's doubling is a good offense. They're decent offenses, but they're not great. So what do we have in terms of the doubling offenses? So you have the one that stands out here is basically Aston Villa. Aston Villa has pretty good or decent amount of attacking numbers. They play Burnley, which is a bad defense, and they play Crystal Palace, which is a decent defense. It's not great, but it's decent. Then you have Everton. Everton are slightly worse than Aston Villa in terms of attacking numbers, but then they play Brentford, they're not a bad defense. They're better than Burnley, but they're still worse than Crystal Palace, if you follow my logic. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you to look at this chart just to kind of map out which players are you targeting. For example, one team that stands out here, Wolves versus Norwich. I know Wolves is not something that is not a team that people are backing, but 8 Nouri on a free hit as your first bench, think about it. I mean, that's clearly an example of somebody playing a Norwich team, and he could be someone that you could back at 4.1. So I liked this table for many reasons where you can calibrate your team and think which are the teams I want to attack. And one last point here before we move on is Burnley, for example. Both of Burnley's fixtures are on the bottom left, which is bad offense and a good defense. So Burnley is playing Aston Villa and Tottenham. You can just avoid. I mean, it's not a team that you need to have. There's enough options outside of Burnley. You just avoid them. So that's the thinking here. Obviously, data doesn't give you the full picture. Data doesn't tell you that West Ham will be really up for it because it's their last home game. It's Noble's last game. Data doesn't tell you that, Leicester are completely, short now that they're not in Europe. So that's basically what this is trying to do. If you take out all the narratives away, which are the teams that you want to be? Ideally, your whole free hit should be comprised of teams in the top right quadrant. We don't have many, and we don't have any doubling teams in that.
Do you know, is there a reason why, by the way, shout out Wrangler, did game week 21 to 36?
It's just, I think he took 10 weeks or 15 weeks data. I don't know if there's any logic to it.
Okay.
But look, that was around the time Gerrard came in. That was around the time Conte came in. So I think it's good enough. I don't think there's any data scrubbing here in terms of I picked this window because this looks better.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thanks again, guys, for joining today. I see you, Andrew, a fellow Korean, by the way. Very rare Korean FPL managers, Pras. So thanks for joining, King Andrew. It's nice to see you. Another fellow Sunny fan, obviously. So shout out Wrangler, okay. Guys. This it'll look very small on the screen. This is definitely a better graphic photo than we usually have, but definitely visit Wrangler's Twitter page where he has uploaded it so you can see it in better quality as well.
Yeah. He did one for 36 as well, which I liked, and we weren't able to share. But yeah, it's just good to see matchups. And this one, I mean, one other thing I would say in this is sometimes it may look like these are bad attacks, but this is XG per 90 and XG conceded per 90. So you have 180 minutes for your doubling teams, right? So if you double the XG per 90 for Aston Villa, for example, they actually come to the right side of the quadrant. Similarly for Everton. So it's not that we're saying that the doubling teams are completely terrible. The fact that you have 180 minutes does help make the case that you go for them over other single game week assets.
Neil suggests that the Game Week 21 was the start of 2022. So interesting. Maybe that is the reason why. Thanks, Neil, for that. Okay, cool. Let's get into the players.
Let's get into the teams. Yeah. So we'll take it team by team, like we did the last week's video, where we will basically talk about each team. What are the key burning questions for free hitters and for non-free hitters? So the first one is Everton. what we've presented here for you is now there's a little bit of a quirky element of this double game week where some teams have all away games, some teams have all home games. So what we did is basically looked at for the whole season, we looked at what are the stats for all the home games versus what are the stats for all away games. Now, it's not rocket science that teams do better at home, but some teams do even better, some teams do okay. So that's what we were trying to determine. So for the listeners, what you have on the left-hand side is your goals, your expected goals, your expected assists for Everton. And on the right-hand side, you Everton at home. And then on the right-hand side, you have everything that the same thing, but away from home. So you see, I mean, there's clearly and this is on a per match basis, Everton are scoring 1.3 goals per game versus 0.9 goals per game away. They have got about 0.4 clean sheets per game versus 0.1. So essentially, if this was an Everton away game, you do not back an Everton defender. This is the type of stuff that we're trying to pick up. And if you look at XG, they have a 1.4 XG, which basically tells me that over 2 games, if they're both home games, they should score about 3 goals. And if it was an away game, they would have basically have an XG close to 1. So clearly there's a 50% or a 40% uplift for an Everton team that is playing at home versus away. That's one point I wanted to make on Everton, which is the fact that they're at home, there is a clear upside to going for Everton players. I would still think in terms of an XG conceded, a 1.4 of XG conceded at home makes me think if they're conceding 3 goals over this double game week, do I really want a defender or not? So that's my first question coming to you, Andy. What should we think about Everton defenders, maybe for free hitters, and for non-free hitters, should they even be thinking about going for a Pickford transfer, for example, for a Ramsdale or something?
I think Everton defender-wise, I wouldn't go anywhere. I wouldn't touch it. I know Banger's in here giving his propaganda, but I like Pickford as an option. I think if you compare to the other doubling keepers, Pickford is the standout for me. With that being said, if you have watched him play the last 2-3 games, he's been making some super saves and some wild, XGC crazy saves here and there. So I'm just thinking that there's some form if they do get conceded, maybe he picks up some points with racking up saves. So I'm leaning towards Pickford as my free hit keeper. I'm sick of Ramsdale. He hasn't worked out the past 10 something game weeks. But if you're on Ramsdale, I don't think you make a keeper transition. You just keep him and you're stuck with him for the rest of the season. So that's where I'm at with their defenders. Who else? Maybe Coleman.
No, Mykolenko. Mykolenko is the guy to have.
Yep. Mykolenko, wonder goal by the way. So maybe. But here's the issue on a free hit is who do you replace? If you go for Mykolenko, that means you're losing Trent and the 2 Villa defenders, which is probably the common template. Cancelo is there as well. So do you go Martinez over Pickford and go for a guy like Mykolenko? I don't know. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I hear you. I think on Pickford as well, one thing to remember, both Pickford and Martinez play Crystal Palace, and Zaha is on penalties and he's not very good at penalties. So I know this is secondary narrative, but you want to have Pickford or Martinez as your goalkeepers just so that he can save a pen from Zaha, and you have Zaha as well in case he scores the penalty. So it's a weird way of thinking about it, but yeah, if you want Crystal Palace penalties, then pick Martinez or Pickford. I agree with you. I think on Mykolenko, unless he's funding a Son in transfer for a Havertz, for example, by downgrading Alonso, I don't think you go there. He's just a decent price, and it's a decent option.
Do you know what his positioning's like? Does he bomb forward a lot? Or
he does, okay. Yeah. And his goal was a wonder goal. I mean, it's not like we don't have enough data to say that he's basically as attacking as a Dean, or it's also defensively they're not so great. So if you're choosing between a Villa second defender or Mykolenko, I would still choose the Villa second defender.
Yeah, agree.
Then let's come to Gordon. So Gordon was an interesting one. A lot of people have assumed he'll be part of free hit teams. A lot of people not on free hit actually went for him in game week 36. Pretty much everyone on bench boost had him. What do you think about him? I mean, I was looking at some stats. He's got an XGI since game week 24. And this is again arbitrary, but I'm basically taking the last 11 game weeks. He's got an XGI of 3.8 over 12 game weeks, which basically means one XG or one goal or assist every 3 games, which is okay. And a lot of times we think that, okay, he's 4.5, he's really cheap, he's good value. And I agree he's good value. But when you're on a free hit, you don't need value. You can actually not have a spot for 4.5 and find something else. So I'm a little bit cold on Gordon. If he enables your whole team and you can't afford somebody else, that's fine. But let's, for example, in my particular case, I had a draft where I could play Cancelo because I had the money to upgrade Gordon to a Cancelo or Gordon. And what would you do there?
So I think that Gordon is like the 11th pick of the free hit, right? The guy that helps you enable all the other singlers and strong doublers that you want. Look, 2 home fixtures. I agree with you. There's a lot underwhelming pick, but there's a lot of I'm worried about his minutes as well. So I'm not sure if he's the best of the best in terms of enablers, but there's not that many enablers. Plus, for the teams I want, draft 1, 2, 3, he has to be there in order for me to get to the team, to the other 10 players that I want. So unfortunately, I think he's also going to be a very highly owned pick this game week. So I'm just going to probably have him as just an option to have with a double coming up. But I'm curious to know what you think.
Well, for the listeners and viewers, what we'll have at the end of this, when we talk about the teams, we'll talk about the template, the most owned players right now. And then we look at these free hit players in the lens of, can you back against? So would you have a Gordon against a Cancelo? Or would you just say, look, I'll just play it safe and have the City defender instead? Could you have a Mykolenko instead of a Gordon, even though Mykolenko will be hardly owned at all versus a Gordon who will be owned 30, 40%, maybe more. So we'll talk about the risk element of it, but I'm just underwhelmed. I mean, he's below McAllister, Cornet, Stuart Armstrong, Umbumo, Gundogan. I mean, he's pretty low down, and I'm not buying the fact that he's cheap, so he's fine. You just have to find a structure where you play another way, and you don't have to have a 4.5 midfielder, but we'll come to that. Richarlison, I think, is not worth a discussion. He looks sharp. We'll come to him when we come to captaincy, because I think he will be the most owned player in game week 37, but I'm not sure he's the best captain yet. So we'll discuss that when we come to the captaincy section.
Pras, Gordon is one of those picks that we do this, right? We're underwhelmed, and then he comes out and scores like a goal and nicks an assist. You know, just one of those classic.
I mean, Gray is looking better than him, isn't he? Damari Gray is looking better than Gordon.
Mikel makes a good point. Gray looks pretty decent too, but he's also one of those frustrating picks. So we're picking from not the greatest of assets here. So.
Right. Okay. Before we move on, I just want to explain the chart in case other people are looking at it. You see these percentages on top. So Everton are 64% overall. This means in terms of the key stats, there are 24 key stats that are identified as important statistics for the team. 20 key stats are with Everton at home and 4 key stats with Everton away. So that's basically what these key stats are, because there's a lot of other things like shots in the box and possession and things like that. So we've only shown you the XG and XG conceded here. But if you go to the members area, you can actually look at the whole thing in terms of how Everton is at home versus away from home. So let's now do the same thing for Villa. So again, we're blessed with Villa having both games at home. There is this narrative that Villa is very good at home. This used to be true. And I remember when I did this comparison 5-6 weeks ago, it used to be a much higher number. But comparing to Everton, for example, Everton had 64% of the key stats better at home. Villa is about 60%. So they're still good. It's a 60-40 split in terms of how good they're at home versus they are away. In terms of expected goals, they're at 1.5 expected at home. So this is slightly more than Everton. And also in terms of XG conceded, it's 1.4, which is slightly less than Everton. But neither of them are amazing stats. Because, again, you're expecting essentially what you're saying is Villa will score 3 goals and concede 3 goals over the double game week. We're taking opponent out of this right now. We're just saying based on their home form. Compared to away, where Villa have an XG of 1.2 and an XG conceded of 1.3. So clearly, they're better attacking at home, but counterintuitively, or maybe that's the case how they set up, they're better defensively away from home. So they've just kind of set up in a way that they're less gung-ho. So this is why we do this comparison, to get these little nuggets. The Villa double defense is very popular. You should do it because you feel that this is a double game week and you like the opponents. Don't do it because they're 2 home games. That narrative, at least statistically, makes no sense because they're better defensively away from home.
All right, so are you leaning towards double defense over double attack, Pras?
Because of scarcity value. And now let's come to Villa. They played yesterday. So we know that Watkins is a slight niggle. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that you can't answer until you know the press conference, until Gerrard basically comes out and says, yes, Watkins is fit, or no, Watkins is out. Ultimately, what he might say is he looks okay. We'll see if he's ready for the first game. And that's going to completely screw up everyone's plans of getting Watkins. Let's talk about what are the implications if Watkins is out. So Villa play in 2 ways. Villa play the system where they play 2 up top and then one behind them. And that's basically where Ings and Watkins have played. And between Coutinho and Buendia, one of them has played typically over the last few game weeks. So that's basically your 2 up top formation. The other one that Gerrard likes is that Christmas tree where you have 1 up top and then you have 2 behind, 3 in midfield, and then 4 in defense. In that case, it's basically Ings who has typically missed out. Watkins is on top. And then behind, it has been Bailey and Coutinho or Buendia. Gerrard, and speaking to fans, Gerrard hasn't fancied playing both Buendia and Coutinho together, either because of they're both not the fastest or they're similar players. I don't know the reason behind that, but he may be forced to, because if Bailey is injured, Watkins is injured, you can see Villa basically playing Ings up top, Coutinho and Buendia behind them. So what does the Watkins injury mean for non-free hitters? It means you just keep Coutinho. If Watkins is injured, you can see Coutinho playing both the games, if obviously assuming Watkins is out for both the games, because he has no choice but to play the Christmas tree formation with Ings up top.
Yeah, and
it also means that Ings becomes the best choice
for sure
as the attacker, and Buendia also becomes a decent option. So that's basically the Watkins implication. What do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree. If Watkins is out, then it makes not only Ings a great option, it also makes Buendia a good option, but it also makes the fullbacks great options as well. I say it lightly because Dean has trolled us for a long time, but I'll give you a prime example. I think it was December or January, can't remember. This is when Gerrard first came into the team, and Ings was kind of, I can't remember, it was an injury or kind of in and out of the team, and he played this Christmas tree formation where Watkins was dropped or was injured, and Ings played up top. And that in that game, Cash had a good game, Buendia had a good game, and Ings was outstanding. Granted, this was a while back, but that's just the prime example in my head that I can think of when they started with Ings up top. And in the last few game weeks, Ings has been really, really decent and really fantastic. And this is with my friend FPL Lost. Ings in the last 4 game weeks, XG of 0.7 against Leicester, 0.7 against Norwich, 0.5 against Burnley, and 0.2 against Liverpool. And they play Crystal Palace and Burnley next. So he had a good game against Burnley as well. So I'm very, very interested in Ings. And shout out to you and Ted last week for giving that shout. And I think he's going to be a very popular pick this game week, especially if Watkins is out.
Yeah. So I think that's clear. And I see Mihir in the chat is saying that Bailey could be fit. If Bailey's fit, then that makes the whole situation very murky, because then either Coutinho or Buendia will play. So people who have Coutinho, it gets even more complicated in terms of, for me, the worst case scenario for people who hold Coutinho is that Watkins is fit and Bailey is fit. In that case, Coutinho plays maximum 1 game, and that's the issue. If Watkins is out and Bailey is out, Coutinho is 100% hold. And if it's something in the middle, then it really depends on where you want to go. If you really wanted a Zaha or somebody else, that's basically to address people who've already gone for Coutinho and don't have a free hit. I think free hitters will generally swerve Coutinho unless it's the scenario that I just talked about, in which Bailey is out and Watkins is completely out for the next 2 games. In that case, I think Coutinho becomes a very good option. So that is if Watkins is out. So now let's talk about if Watkins is fit. What do you think is the situation if Watkins is completely fit? It was a cramp. Gerrard comes and says he's okay. He's really important to us. Do you think Watkins over Ings or still Ings?
I think it's a toss-up, coin toss-up, because I think both of them start both games, and it could go either way. So it's a tough one. I don't think I would go double. I mean, because I do like the idea of having 2 double Aston Villa defense. Again, that's the differential of this free hit compared to the people that are not free hitting. So I'm pretty bullish on that. So it leads me to either picking between Watkins and Ings, and I don't think there's a right answer here.
Yeah. I would slightly get skewed towards Watkins if he's completely fit, because as I mentioned in the 2 formations, whether it's Christmas tree or 2 up top, Watkins is the constant. I would love to have Ings, and I'm telling you, if Watkins is injured, even for 1 game, I even think Ings would be my captain. So it's an odd one on free hit, where I would either, if Watkins is injured, I'd captain Ings, but if he's completely fit, I won't even own Ings. So that's basically at least my thinking at the moment.
At your position and rank, Pras, are you thinking about Watkins' high ownership as well?
No, it's just minutes. I just think Watkins will play more minutes. And then in that case, I will captain Richarlison. That's the thinking. If Watkins is fit, my captain is Richarlison. I'll have Watkins up top. Because I don't know if Ings will play both the games. He looks good. I completely agree with you. He looks sharp. That volley that he scored yesterday, which was ruled offside, so sharp, so good. So I completely agree. I hope he plays both. People who are punting can go for him. I'm just playing. It's not about a rank safe thing. I just think it's an X minutes thing. Watkins is also looking good. And by the way, yesterday, up until Watkins went out and Ings became more central, I think Watkins was the one getting the chances. Just before the goal that they scored, Watkins had the chance saved by Alisson. Ironically, he was offside. But that Watkins was looking dangerous as well. So it's not like you're picking a famous things that happened last week, Matip versus a Trent. Both are good options, and either could do well. So for double game week, I would go for Watkins if he's injury free.
Okay, and how about let's go to the defense. How about Dean and Cash? And Mings.
I don't think there's much to separate the 2. Mm-hmm. There's not much to separate the 2, despite the fact that Cash has got big mega hauls this year. That's simply because he's the one at the end of the goals. So he's the goal scorer. Dean is the assister. So if you want somebody with assist potential who's on some corner kicks, some set pieces, then Dean is your guy. And I probably still lean towards Dean, simply because you can't bank on your defender scoring goals, but you can bank on your defender taking the odd set piece, getting an assist off a corner and things like that. So there's not much in it though. So we don't need to kind of get into a deep dive between the 2. If whichever one you have, you keep. If you can afford, Cash will have much higher ownership. If you want to play defensive, go there, but there's not much in it.
Okay. Crystal Palace?
Let's go to Palace. So in terms of stats, this is the one that stood out the most to me in terms of home and away.
Yep.
So as you had seen in the past, there were about 20 key metrics that favored the home team versus 4 for the away team. In Crystal Palace's case, better at home versus away. So, basically, news here is that Palace is playing both their games away from home. So be a little bit cautious about how optimistic you are about Palace's chances. Of course, you can argue that both these games are manageable. They can play both Everton and Aston Villa away. It's not a big deal. These are easy games. But look at the delta. Palace has an XG of 1.8 for the season at home, 1.1 away from home. That's 65% drop in terms of Palace's output when they're away from home. In terms of XG conceded, I know we're not really looking at Palace defenders, but they only concede 1 XG per 90 at home, whereas they concede 1.5 away from home. So if you again translate this into what this means over the double game week, it means Palace is expected to score 2 goals, only 2 goals over the 2 games, and they're expected to concede 3 goals. Again, opponent indifference here. You can think that the opponents are easier and they can do better, but that's fine. What we want to show here is the fact that be careful. I think Zaha is still a very good pick, simply because of his price, simply because the manager wants him to play up front. He is on penalties, go for him. But I think outside of that, I'm seeing some Anderson picks, some I saw Butland shouts, some people on Mateta. I mean, if you have them, keep them. But I'm not that bullish on Palace over the double, given that they're both away.
So our friend FPL Cam Z, I was speaking with him, and I know a lot of people are bullish on Anderson, and some people are even starting him, having a Crystal Palace defender in there. Palace XGC in the last 6 games: away 6.58, sixth best; home 6.54, fifth best; home conceded 2, away conceded 5. So in terms of straightforward XGC in the last 6, home and away, there's very minimal difference according to the stats. So maybe that narrative is not as strong over the season as it is in recent memory. So, but with that being said, I do remember they were fantastic a couple game weeks ago at home, and then they were just so bad away. So I think that home crowd has definitely an effect in Crystal Palace for sure.
If you want to take more recent data, I agree. They're looking better. But look, for me, if you can, the longer back you can go. So for this one, we've taken the whole season. Maybe there's something to be said about them kind of not having much to play for, so they're freer. Maybe they'll be more attacking away from home as well. I just don't get why you would 1.5 XG conceded away from home is pretty high for the whole season. So look, it's fine. I think Klein is decent. I think. Who else to go for? Anderson is fine. Yeah. It's fine. But again, it comes down to opportunity cost. If you're going for one of them, you're not going for a Dean or a Cash or a single game weaker like a Trent. I mean, I would even say, why not look at Spurs defenders? I mean, they're home to Burnley. Emerson, Sessegnon, both are attacking. I mean, both are decent options if you're on a free hit. So that's something to keep in mind. They are looking better away from home. I won't go against that, but I'd be cautious.
Okay. Okay. Anyone other than Zaha then? Is Zaha the main guy?
Not for me. I think Zaha,
really?
but Zaha is an important one. So I think Zaha is one that you definitely get, because it's not easy for non-free hitters to get to him.
Right.
They will hesitate to sell a Coutinho, a Kulusevski, definitely not a Saka. So you basically will have that advantage. And look, if he scores in one of those games, it's great. I mean, the other quirky thing about Zaha is whichever game he will score in, he'll score against your defender. If you're going for a Pickford and a Cash and a Dean kind of setup, because again, he plays Everton and Aston Villa. So what do you think about that? A lot of people talk about the fact that on free hit, you should not have your attacker play against your defender.
I guess it's like hedging your bet a little bit. Hedging your bet against one player for your entire defense clean sheet. So maybe not like for like, but I think Zaha's a very decent pick this game week. If you're going to go for one Crystal Palace player, he is the standout. I do think he's the edge over, hopefully, a guy like Saka, but Saka also plays Newcastle. Newcastle, right? Yeah. So
away.
So yeah, it's not like a full confidence pick, but there's very limited that 6-7 million bracket midfielders to go for on a free hit, and so naturally I think we go towards Zaha and his obvious penalty miss that's inevitable as well. So.
Well, look, my perspective on this thing is there are these investment funds in real life which invest in only. You can only go for. You can be long only on certain stocks, or you can hedge on certain stocks. And I'm not trying to make this into a finance session, but a lot of fund managers make more money off the hedge than off buying particular shares itself. And why I'm trying to say this is when you have a Zaha playing against a Martinez or a Cash, it's fine. You can still end up with more money or more points in this case by having a Zaha goal because nobody else owns Zaha. Or if it doesn't work out, a clean sheet for Dean or an assist for Dean. Let's not get into the mindset. If this was a game where we were only basically looking at maximizing, only one winner who would get the highest points in game week 37 and you want to be that one winner, then fine. This is a game about getting high number of points to help you with the whole season. And in that case, I think it's fine if Zaha is playing your defenders. That's at least my view. So having a hedge is not a problem at all. Obviously, you don't want 5 attackers playing 5 defenders in the same team. That completely spoils it. But I think having a Zaha, good option. Having defenders, good option.
Awesome. Lastly, let's do Leicester quickly. Honestly, no interest here. Just way too risky. Madison, Vardy maybe, but I don't think I'll go anywhere near the Leicester assets, especially because they play Watford first game. And let's say your guy misses out the Watford game, then they're playing Chelsea the next game. So that's not even a good thing. So sketchy double. Go ahead.
One thing on...
Uh-oh, Pras. I'm stuck on an island alone. Oh, no.
I think that...
Okay, he's trying to come back. Come on, Wi-Fi. I'm not the only one, guys, right? Pras? Give me 1 second, guys. He'll be back. He'll be back.
Sorry, I'm here.
He's
Can
back.
you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening to my internet today.
Not your fault.
Where did you lose me?
One thing about I think the Chelsea game after.
No, so what I was saying was we will get the Watford news. If we get a leak that Vardy is starting against Watford, who have all the injury issues, then you may think that, look, I'm going to take that chance with Vardy starting against Watford because that then is a good enough single game week to back Vardy against maybe a Kane that also has a single game week, right? And then you get a little bit of upside or a little bit of money extra to play around with your squad. So I can see people shifting from Kane to Vardy. And you may never know. Vardy also comes on for a 30-minute cameo against Chelsea as well. So it may happen that people look at a Vardy type player just because he's Vardy and he's playing against Watford.
Schmeichel, any interest in going there for a free hit? Definitely not, right?
I think there's better goalkeepers.
Agree. If you're a Schmeichel owner, you're stuck with him. So
no, you play him. He'll be fine.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of there's a few weaker double game weekers which are fine to play. I mean, any Burnley players that you have, any Leicester players that you have, you just keep them. There's an argument to be had if you had a Leicester midfielder, would you switch him to a Zaha or not? But that's about it. Otherwise, you keep your doublers and you start them.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next slide, which is we're nearing the hour mark. Backing against the template. So again, a lot of interest in what singlers to have and what doublers to have. And as we mentioned in the beginning of the pod, it's a lot about your risk appetite and risk profile, especially this late into the season. And for example, you might be around that 20, 30K mark and want to make a push into the top 10K. Then maybe you go a little more punty, a little less, try to go all out in the free hit and try to maximize your score. So a basic idea of, what players are highly owned and what players are lowly owned, especially in the top 10K presented by Live FPL.
Yeah, exactly. And so for the listeners, it's the top 10K effective ownership. And let's have a chat about some of the top owned players and say, are you willing to back against them in their fixture in 37? Or do you think that they have a good enough fixture and you want to retain them? And that's basically trying to help people. And what Andy and I may think that is somewhere you shouldn't back against may be different from your own risk appetite. So basically it's to let you think about, how do I want to calibrate my risk profile for game week 37? Because you could go for 11 doublers, you could go for 7 singlers. It really depends on what you want to get out of this game week 37. If you're at rank 9,999 and you want to stay there and not drop at all, then basically be defensive. Otherwise, be as aggressive as you can. So you have to kind of do that with the numbers in mind. So let's talk about Salah. Obviously, he disappointed again. I still don't understand how he was benched after missing Newcastle. Clearly, there's something behind the scenes, or there's a niggle. It was not just a rest. But then the question is, he's playing Southampton, who are also looking really, really bad. Something is going wrong there. Zero motivation. They're looking worse defensively, worse from an attacking point of view. Do you back against Salah or do you go for Salah?
I read a very funny tweet. Sorry, I forgot who did it, so I can't quote it. But someone wrote, Salah is inevitable to score this game week, and Southampton's inevitable to get a clean sheet this game week. So a classic case of unstoppable force meets an immovable object. So it's just one of those things. Southampton fans have been really, really bad defensively, and you would reckon that this is the opportunity for Salah to lick his chops and get his points and goals. And for sure he's thinking about that golden boot at the back of his mind, and probably is hurt in pride a little bit with what's happened to him this year. You think about not qualifying for the World Cup, missing out on the AFCON, and struggling recently. I don't know about struggling, but not being as great as he actually is in recent memory. So maybe he has a chip on his shoulder, but as you mentioned, Pras, maybe there's something going on that we're not aware of. Who knows? The whole transfer issue right now, and
his contract.
Yeah, his contract. I don't know. It's something is wrong here. But that benching was just completely out of the blue. And I'm very surprised that happened. I don't think it's a rest thing at all. So
it's tough. Look, Son would have played twice before Salah steps onto the field next time against Southampton. And you back him to score 1 or 2 goals in the next against Arsenal and then home to Burnley, right? So they're going to be joint or very close. There's no way Salah misses this. My risk appetite, the answer is no. Salah will be in my team. People who are chasing, this is your chance. And I said this in our deadline stream as well. If you're at 50K, captain De Bruyne. If you're at 30, 40, 50K and you're not happy with their rank, you'd be happier finishing 100K than not having tried for 10K. Go without Salah. So that's basically the thinking. But it is suicidal to an extent that if you're around 10, it is 10 to, if you're 10 to 20K, that shouldn't be the way that you're trying to gain and get into the top 10K. So if you're close enough, I think it's not worth the gamble. If you're definitely in the top 10K and you want to stay there, then not worth the gamble, because it is such a good fixture. If he was away to Newcastle even or any other tougher fixture, I would have said fine. It's Southampton and they're not looking good. He's going to be over 100% EO anyway, so you will actually be losing points even on a free hit from him. But I think you have him in.
All right. So if backing against him means captaining someone else, or actually just losing him on the free hit and going for someone else like Mane,
I think you lose him on the free hit.
Cool.
If you really want to back against him and you go for De Bruyne. See, there are good fixtures for Spurs, but most will probably go with Son and Kane. But what about De Bruyne, who has all the motivation? Even though West Ham is a tougher fixture, if you think, he should definitely start.
Yeah.
And he looks so good in the last game. If you want to go for a De Bruyne, nobody hates it. If you wanted to go for a Mane, if you think Southampton are looking bad, Mane is playing up top, you're confident on his minutes, go for Mane. So there are options around the Salah price now that are way riskier from an EO perspective, but have points potential as well.
Very attractive. And I don't like the narrative of City are playing West Ham, so you should be. West Ham are a good defensive team. They're a good team. Away, it's not going to be easy. Yeah, that's all true. I get it. But Man City are Man City. They're just another gear right now, especially in the Premier League. So with KDB in form, plus that team looking deadly and trying to go all out after being outside the Champions League, I'd back City against any team in the league at this moment in time.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's one discussion on Salah. You can think about your team and see if you wanted to go against him. Saka, I think we both mentioned it earlier. We both agree that he's somebody you can back against if you were to go for a Zaha versus a Saka. Which other midfielders are people looking at? I don't think there are too many. So let's stick to Zaha. Zaha over Saka, you agree?
I agree. I mean, it's scary. Newcastle against Arsenal against Newcastle, and Zaha. Apparently, his positioning might change. He might play a little deeper, but I do agree. I'd go Zaha over and take those two fixtures over Newcastle.
Also, I just got a text from Mihir. I think Saka is also at a doubt for the North London derby. So
Oh,
that would actually make him also a doubt for the weekend. But anyway, we don't know that yet, but we agree. Cancelo is a very difficult one. Where are you with that? I don't think many free hits are going for a City defender. Definitely not Cancelo. Many non-free hit teams are sitting on double City defense. Are you happy backing against them?
I'm not happy backing against them. I think this is a very dangerous play here of going double Villa defenders over Cancelo. I've even considered dropping Trent just to fit Cancelo in there somehow, but I still prefer Trent over Cancelo. Is there a way maybe I drop Gordon and put Cancelo in there? Possibly, but I don't think I have enough team value. It's a tough one. I don't feel happy going into it without a City defender because I do think they have a good chance of getting a clean sheet, regardless of it being West Ham. And even if not a clean sheet, Cancelo is Cancelo with high XG every single game. So,
yeah, I think if you're not going for him, it's just a risk you take that a Dean or a Cash matches or outperforms a Cancelo. I don't think that's a straightforward one. It is a sacrifice. You just hope he doesn't turn out one of those 15 pointers. And West Ham are a good team, so it's an educated gamble that you're taking. So I think that's fine. What about Trent?
No, I'm definitely keeping Trent. He's in my free hit. Have you considered Robertson over Trent by any chance?
I think Robertson is above Trent for me now. Now
Really?
that he's had
Because
his
he
rest.
got rested. Yeah, I was thinking that too. Because Trent got rested recently too, right?
Yeah, so it's not that Trent may get rested. I just think that now Robertson is above Trent in the pecking order for a nailed start. And the fact that Robertson has been putting up attacking output, not underlying numbers, but attacking output better than Trent, then you just kind of go for the cheaper one. If you had to go for one, but I'm potentially in my free hit draft, you'll see I'm trying to get both in because I just think Southampton fixture is that good.
Yeah, it is a great fixture. Both in, so you're going to start both of them, obviously.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. We'll come to mine.
Okay, cool.
We'll come to my draft. Let's quickly run through some of these other names. Son, I think everyone 100% will have. Nketiah, I think the EO looks very high here because of bench boosters. Some may still start him, but I don't think he's somebody we need to kind of worry about. Famous last words again. Away to Newcastle when you can have a Richarlison, Ings, or a Watkins. So that's fine. Chelsea defenders. I think this one is another interesting one. Nobody on a free hit will have a Chelsea defender when they're home to Leicester. So what do you think? Can you back against them? Would you rather have a Dean over a starting Alonso?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd back against them. Yep.
I agree. It's a slight worry. You just hope that they rotate after the top four is secured. We will see. I mean, I think the North London derby will go a long way. If Spurs don't win that one, then pretty much Arsenal and Chelsea are secured. So that one will determine their willingness to play the best team.
I don't know, maybe 7-8 game week Reece James owner, I'm fully mentally prepared for his 21 pointer to come this game week while I go on a free hit against him. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? I mean, these defenders. I mean, this was the reason for my rant, right? I mean, I have had James since game week 31 when Chelsea were top of the ticker, and he was the guy that I was basically backing to get the points. Now, people may say he had injury issues and he will not start, and fine, I take the cameos on the chin. It's the ones where he started and done nothing basically where it hurts a lot. So it's fine. It is what it is.
Also, FPL humbles you because I was a Reece James owner and I didn't have Alonso, and I got hurt by Alonso for like 2 game weeks, and I think it was last week or
the 34 double.
Yeah. So Alonso goes off after the half. Man, my memory's going shot here, but goes off there after the half. A 1 pointer, and Chelsea on a clean sheet. I got Reece James smiling, like smirking, and, and they end up with the same amount of points. So,
Well, and idiots like me had both. So
yeah,
that's what it is. So look, why we're discussing each of these players on an effective ownership basis is to calibrate your risk. If you wanted to basically decide to back against certain these players, these are the guys. And I want to spend a minute just to explain why EO matters. EO matters basically for rank volatility. If you have 100% owned Salah and you instead go for De Bruyne, who's 20% owned, what it means is if both players score 5 points, no difference. If Salah scores 5 and De Bruyne scores 10, then you lost out on 5 points from not owning Salah, but you gained 8 points from owning De Bruyne because he's 20% owned. So you got a 3-point uplift. On vice versa, if Salah scored 10 and you had De Bruyne and he blanked, you basically lost 8 points. So all you're doing is basically increasing the volatility in the change in your rank by going different on your effective ownership. That's why effective ownership is what you should look at to calibrate your risk versus going. It's not about, oh my God, I have a feeling about this player versus this player and I'm taking a risk by going this player. It's simply what is your competition doing? Who do they own versus what if you want to basically zig if they're zagging or the vice versa.
I want to say this, Pras. Look, there's people, managers out there that don't think so much about EO and just kind of try to get the best players they think are the best players and the informed players, and that's a perfectly fine way to put it. But I'll give you 2 examples of why EO definitely should be a little bit of a factor in your decision making, at least for someone pretty new to the game and learning it by listening to all sorts of very successful managers over the years. Our good friend Abdul FPL Salah once said, FPL is a game of risk management, which is exactly the points you're making. And there's another friend of mine, Dan Bennett on FPL, who has, I think, 9 top 10 Ks in a row, or 9
top 10 Hall of Fame.
Yeah, just 9 top 10 Ks. And I had a conversation with him early in the season with FPL Bruno, and he said the most. It was just so funny to me because he said when he first started playing or first started getting into it, or maybe even now, he would just go on the main fantasy website and look at the guys that were brought in the most, and then just pick those players out of those players. So every week he was just going for the popular guys, and that's how he maintained his rank, took some risks here and there, shot up the rank when he needed to, but controlled his risk management. So I definitely do believe EO is a big factor if you want to consistently be getting good ranks year in and year out.
Yeah, the one thing I disagree with is people being scared of EO. You don't have to be scared of EO. I think it's amiss if you're not aware of EO. You should know the risks that you're taking if you're taking risks and what is the cost of that risk. And that's basically good management. If you go against it, that's your choice. If you go for it, again, your choice. And I think the later you get into the season, the more important it gets because now you're getting close to the goal that you want to achieve. A good example is last season, I was at 18K going into game week 38. I sold Salah, bought Mane, captained Mane. Mane got a brace, Salah blanked. I got lucky. But basically, I said I need to have that EO play where I have to go against Salah. Otherwise, I cannot enter the top 10K.
Yep.
I ended up missing out and I ended at 11K. But that's exactly why I'm saying if I hadn't known EO, I wouldn't have had that ability to calibrate the risk and then completely put it on, turn it on its head.
I'll give you an exact same example last season, Pras, where I was just continually going with the popular captain pick, continually going with the popular transfers and actually trying to move a little bit earlier just to get a little bit of price rise here and there. And do you remember the triple captaincy Kane week last season? I think it was maybe 23, 24, something like that. I decided to go for my guy, Sonaldo, Son, and triple captain him that week. And that worked out well. And that really shot me up the ranks and gave me a very good chance. And in the end, into the top 10K as well. So you definitely have to take those risks. There's no doubt about it. It's just finding the right time and sort of the weeks to actually go for it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have to if the popular stuff is going well too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, I think that's enough on the EO because we've talked about the top 10 most owned players. I think for players like Kulusevski, Mount, Foster, Gordon. So Gordon, Richarlison, obviously people will have on the free hit and these numbers will go up. The last thing to say on this is, in terms of doublers, there are not many here. So you don't have to force being differential, because if you have, let's say, so in the top, these are the top, all players owned over 10%. Schmeichel is one, Gordon, Richarlison, Coutinho, Watkins, and Cash. These are the players that are owned over 10% by the top 10K. So by the fact that you will have 5 or 6 doublers in itself gives you a massive advantage. Whether that advantage is 5 points, 10 points, 15 points, it is an advantage. You don't have to then say, okay, I also need to sell Salah for De Bruyne if you don't want to get that edge. You will have an edge anyway. So that's it, basically the last point.
Okay. Free hit drafts?
Yep. Should we start with yours?
Sure. Very boring free hit draft. I put both of them. And they're basically the same thing, but one has KDB, one has Kane. I did consider Mane, but even Luis Diaz I considered, but I think I'm gonna have to decide between Kane and KDB, as my two others will be Son and Salah, in terms of the heavy hitters for singlers.
So read out your team. Maybe the Kane one, just for the readers.
So the readers, for the listeners, I've got Pickford in goal. My defensive line, I'm playing a 3-4-3. The defense is Dean, Cash, and Trent. In the midfield, I've got Son, Salah, Gordon, Zaha. And up top, I got Richarlison, Ings, and Kane. Please do ignore the captaincy. It's just on there for now. So Ings could become Watkins. Gordon is there to enable my team, but I don't know. Maybe you can switch to a gray, or we'll see. And as we mentioned, I'll back Zaha over the guys like Saka and Kulusevski, but I do like Saka too. So the risk is there. No Cancelo, obviously. No City inside for the Kane draft. So those are the main risks for this draft.
Okay. So look, let's stick to yours first. So I think this will be very close to the template. So for those that you will see tons of free hit drafts. A lot of them will have the double Villa and Pickford combination and a Trent or a Liverpool defender. A lot of them will have this midfield of Son, Salah, Gordon, and Zaha. And most of them will have Richarlison and a Villa attacker. So this is fairly template in terms of what you will see out there, and there's a reason for it. I mean, you're going for the triple Villa. There is lack of clarity with the midfielders at Villa, so that's why you've gone for double defense and an attack. At Everton, I think it's pretty clear who the three standouts are. We discussed it. It was Pickford, Gordon, and Richarlison. If you had more money, maybe you could have gone for Gray over Gordon.
Right.
And then ultimately, it comes down to your risk appetite with Salah. Do you want to stick with Salah or not? Son is a no-brainer. And then the last decision that most free hitters will have is, shall they play Kane, De Bruyne, or Mane? These are all three that can fit in the system, because if you play De Bruyne, you go 5 in the middle. If you play Kane or if you play Mane, you go 5 in the middle. Or if you play Kane, you play 3 up top. That's basically it. So my question to you is, where are you with Kane versus De Bruyne versus Mane?
Kane versus De Bruyne versus Mane. We go back to the chart that FPL Wrangler made, just purely on the team fixtures. The Tottenham one is right up there, right? Good offense versus bad opposition defense. Versus Man City is good offense versus opposition defense is also pretty decent. So if you're purely basing it off that graph, then I think Kane is the one. Kane also safer for minutes. He's on pens. Still the talisman, and Burnley or Spurs are going to be hopefully fighting for a chance into the top 4 if they do beat or tie Arsenal in this next fixture. So I think I'm going to wait it out and just see how this Arsenal fixture plays out, and then kind of, I don't know, maybe it makes no difference. Maybe it has the opposite effect of what I think it'll do. So it's hard to really be subjective on what the Arsenal fixture will do, but I think I'm leaning towards Kane. I think so. But with that being said, it would be really nice to own KDB.
I own him this week, and he's still getting outscored by Son, so it's not that great. Look, in my view, I think Kane is slightly better. And by the way, I see on the chat, Steven is saying, I think you need both Kane and KDB. Fine. If you want both Kane and KDB, then you have to lose Salah. We cannot have Son, Salah, KDB, and Kane. So you have to choose. I think Salah has a better fixture, single game week fixture than De Bruyne's. So for me, Salah trumps over De Bruyne. Between De Bruyne and Kane is a trickier one because people are going with these narratives on Kane is looking off form or whatever. I don't buy it. I think he's still very much involved. Burnley at home, he will be the guy. They will have more possession. So it won't be, typically we always talk about Sun games and Kane games. It's not really a Sun game, Burnley at home. So then if you expect Spurs to score, it's probably Kane to be involved as well. And Sun will be. And the Sun narrative has changed because he's going for the golden boot and things. Okay, he's being a little bit more selfish, fine. But I think Kane is still important. So for me, it's Kane over De Bruyne. Mane would have been above Kane had he not started or if he doesn't start the final. I'm just worried that it's a single game week and, Klopp is being so ruthless that I'm now worried about Mane starting. And I'll say one other thing.
Go ahead.
So a lot of people are debating between Liverpool midfielders, basically Diaz, who's looking amazing, Jota, who's not looking so great, but even if he starts against Southampton, that could be great. My problem is it's hard to predict Klopp now. I mean, it's so sad that now we have another team that is getting hard to predict. Diaz could play the final, but then could also play the midweek. I mean, can you guarantee me that Diaz won't play and Jota will play? You can't.
Yeah.
So it becomes like a punt where I say that if I wanted to go for a third Liverpool, I'd probably just go Robertson. And you'll see this in my free hit draft where I'll just say, look, I know Robertson will now start. Trent should start. Salah should start. Why should I then kind of faff around with a Diaz or a Jota kind of pick? And I know Robertson is boring because a lot of non-free hitters will have him. But I'm trying to take that out of my head. I want to find the best 3 Liverpool players. And I think Robertson is in the top 3.
This is like a semi-rant by Pras, by the way.
No, I mean, by the way, Paul makes a good point. I tried this draft, Paul. You can have Mane, Kane, KDB, and Son. This you can have.
That's Salah, yeah.
But then you won't have Salah, and also you won't have Zaha, I think. Or you don't have Trent. So you have to give up. It's not just giving up Salah, you're giving up Zaha or Trent as well. I just feel it's a sacrifice not worth making. I mean, if Mane misses the final, which I don't expect he will, I'm not taking a Mane over Salah risk, not this week.
You just can't forget that Salah is playing Southampton. That's a fixture, heavenly fixture on paper. So it's just super risky to go without him, especially with his incredibly high EO. So I don't think I would drop Salah, especially at the rank we are at, Pras, and where I'm trying to finish in terms of the end game. So, by the way, the thing I wanted to say about why I'm considering the KDB over a Kane pick is there is a chance that as good as Burnley at home looks on paper, as you mentioned, it could be one of those games like I think Brentford and another team where they Brighton where Spurs just struggled to get that early goal and didn't have that space behind and ended up tying and losing both those games. So maybe the idea here is that if that's the case, I might want to spread the risk, not risk, but spread the potential of Spurs being locked down and give if both Son and Kane are likely to get the points, just hope that Son gets the points and maybe put it on KDB instead. So a lot to think about, a lot to digest, but I'll wait to see what the Arsenal fixture does and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, Kamji is making a point that the FA Cup is a day before the deadline and things will change. I don't think things will change a lot because I know right now, we all know Mane, Salah and Diaz are going to start the final. And when that happens, you will not be confident even then that Jota is going to start midweek. So unless we're talking about an injury or a niggle or that somebody's out for midweek and it opens up a new possibility, Robertson limping off, maybe meaning Tsimikas is now playing, or Diaz basically limping off, meaning Jota is way more nailed. By the way, Firmino is also back, which complicates it even more. So that's the problem. So I don't think the FA Cup final will change the picture too much unless there are any injuries coming out of it.
Okay, let's go to your team. Hour and 20 minutes. Guys, please do hit the like button. Thanks everybody for joining today. I really appreciate it. The like button definitely helps our algorithm. So let's move to the Pras draft, which is also very similar.
It's similar. It's it slightly plays on a slightly more higher team value. So if you can't get to this, I will talk about what could you do to downgrade. I have Martinez in goal. I have Dean, Robertson, and Trent in defense. So basically, it's double Villa, double Liverpool defense. Then you have Zaha, Salah, Son, and Gordon, same midfield as you. And then I have Ings, Richarlison, and Kane, same as you. So I think, and then the bench is Delph, Kelly. Ait Nouri is my only playing player who plays Norwich at home. So it's a risky one. I do recognize that. In fact, my recommendation would be that and for me as well, if I release some money, having a first bench would be good, because this isn't a full double game week. I mean, you could have basically Trent missing the whole game and then you need a first sub. So having a first sub is definitely a good idea. But let's talk about this setup, why I like it. I like it because I don't really want an Everton defender or a goalkeeper. And this way, basically, I get both Martinez and Dean. I'm missing out on cash, but fair enough. I get to keep both Robertson and Trent, who I think are the two best single game week defenders to have. And then the midfield and the forward we've already talked about with you. So if other people are looking at similar, I think the obvious downgrades are you go Martinez to Pickford and Robertson to Dean, like you have in your draft. You could also basically look at Kane to De Bruyne, which releases about 0.5 in value, or Ings to Watkins if he's free, if he's injury free.
Pras, if you went Pickford, Martinez to Pickford and Robertson to cash, where else? What would you do with the money?
I could upgrade Gordon to Gray, or even Kulusevski. I don't hate Kulusevski either. I don't love the Gordon spot. And by the way, there's another option. I could go Ait Nouri to Cancelo and then bench Gordon. So I would play Cash, Dean, Cancelo, Trent, Pickford in goal. And then I would have Son, Salah, Zaha as my midfield, and then Ings, Richarlison, and Kane as my upfront. So that's also an option. But I just like Robertson more than Cancelo. That's the thing.
Yeah, tough free hit this week. Hopefully it pays off, but we'll see.
I mean, before we go, last question in terms of calibration of single game weekers against double game weekers. I mean, this is what we were also trying to do with EO. Where are you with it? I mean, your team has 1, 2,
7, I think.
3, 7 double game weekers. So that's pretty high.
6, 7, 8. Actually, I think I have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 doublers.
And in my case, I have Son, Kane, Salah, Trent. I have 5. So basically, I have 6. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have 6 double game weekers. So I think that's fine.
Yeah. You have 6. I have 7. I think the normal template is going to be around that too, 6, 7.
Yeah. So I think that's fine. You don't need to force it. You don't need to have another double game weeker just because you think you need to go gung ho on the double game week. Going back to the Wrangler chart, if you think single game weekers have a good game, I really think the Southampton game is one to attack, and you are risking negative points if you completely back against Liverpool. If you go basically only Trent from Liverpool, for example. That's just my view.
Yeah, I think someone made a draft on Twitter with 11 doublers, and it looked awful. So, yeah, you don't want to go there. But
all right.
Who knows? Okay, guys. Thank you so much for joining today. Second to last episode last week. Next week will be our final episode of the season and a much-needed break from FPL. But with that being said, keep up to, just stay engaged. Just 2 more weeks to go. Try to give maximum effort when you can to make a final push. Have your goals, and you just never know. You just never know what's going to happen. So I would still say that even if you're a little bit tired from the long season, and it has been a difficult season to say the least, Pras, still, we're almost there. We're almost at the end game.
I mean, Harry's just joined the chat. Harry, you're very late, firstly. But more importantly, I mean, Harry's an inspiration for anyone who is looking for a late charge. I mean, the guy was like 38, 40K 4 weeks ago, and now he's like smashing it in the top 5K. So it's a great one. And it's not just about chips. It was about having the right players around the chips. I mean, he went Ronaldo before his wild card without chips, where he completely smashed it. So yeah, there is still hope. Do not give up on your season. Calibrate your risk depending on where you are.
Yeah, Harry, I love Harry, but he's probably the most passionate FPL manager I've met during our in our community. So shout out Harry, shout out Dred, shout out Spartans, Debruv, Kev, all these guys. Thanks for joining every week, and we will see you again next week. Good luck this week, and hopefully Amara's brace tonight. Come on.
Good luck, everyone.
Come on. See you guys.